Welcome to Table Talk Reviews. I'm Matt Mitchell. In this video, we're going to be looking at a game of magic flipping cowboys called Trickdraw. This is a competitive card game for 2 to 5 players designed by Morteza Rohinajad and the team at House Fish Balloon. It's now published by Good Games Publishing, who provided me with this copy. Let me teach you how to play, and then I'll share my thoughts. Setup for Trickdraw is extremely simple. Shuffle all 72 cards if you're playing with more than 2 players and deal 2 to each player. If you're playing with 2 players, remove all 5 copies of Trickdraw from the deck, shuffle the remaining cards, and deal 3 cards to each player. On your turn, you'll start by drawing 1 card from the deck and adding it to your hand. Then you can play a card, either face up for access to the abilities or face down for 1 point. Then you can use any face up ability cards you already have that say once per turn. You also have the option to forego playing any of your cards and simply draw 2 additional cards from the deck and add them to your hand. Cards played on your turn are not discarded, but will stay in your play area and you'll continue to add more cards on future turns. It's best to not rearrange your cards during the game, as they'll be flipped by various actions, and part of the game is remembering where specific cards are located. Let's take a look at the different card types now and show you how they work. Cards have 3 types of abilities: on reveal, once per turn, and ongoing. On reveal cards are resolved immediately after they're played face up or if they're flipped face up. For example, this ability flips all of my cards except this one. So this one would get flipped up, this one would get flipped face down, and this one is an on reveal ability as well, so it would also trigger. It has a discard 1 cost, which means that you must discard 1 card from your hand to be able to use this ability. If a previously played on reveal card is flipped face down or was originally played face down, you can use an ability to flip it face up and activate the reveal ability again. As their name suggests, once per turn cards are used once per turn. You can use them in any order. If you have multiple copies of the same card, you can use all of the copies you own, as long as you can pay for each one individually. You can use them in any order. I could use Money Talks first to flip a card, which is also a once per turn ability, and I could now choose to use this ability if I wanted to. Ongoing abilities are always active as long as that card is face up. If a player flips a card face down, you lose access to that ability. Cards are worth 1 point if played face down, or if flipped face down by an ability by you or your opponent. There are 2 ways to win Trickdraw, either through an endgame showdown or an instant win by having 2 of the 3 unique cards face up in front of you and you win immediately. If someone doesn't get an instant win, as soon as someone plays a card that allows them to reach 10 points on their turn, the game will move to an endgame showdown. The player who has reached 10 points, here I have 3 rallies, each worth 3 points for a total of 9, plus 1 face down card. I've reached 10 points, triggering the end of the game. They will draw 2 cards from the deck and add them face down to their play area for an additional 2 bonus points. They can look at these cards to see them in case they're revealed in the last few turns of the game. Then all other players, except for the player who triggered the endgame, will get 1 final turn, taking their turn as normal, triggering abilities, attempting to get more points than their opponent. The trick here is that all tied players will be eliminated, and after that, the player with the most points remaining wins the game. Here's an example of an endgame showdown where player elimination might take place. Each row is a different player's play area. The first player triggered the endgame when they played this rally, getting 2 additional face down cards as a reward. The middle player was going for that instant win, so they ended the game with only 6 points. They're losing to this player's 12 points. This player currently has 10 points, and as their last play on their final turn, they play Trickdraw, discarding 1 card from their hand and stealing a card from the first player, adding it to their play area and finishing with 11 points, while also reducing the first player's hand to 11 points. Thus, those two players are eliminated, and the middle player ends up pulling out the victory with only 6 points. And that's how you play Trickdraw. Now let's jump into my review. I thought Trickdraw was a good card game, but it probably won't get played as much as I would like for a few different reasons. The first is the box is bigger than it needs to be. For this type of card game that has no other components, it's a fairly small deck, probably about this size. It could easily fit in a sea salt and paper sized box, and games like that and Scout get brought out to every single game night, and anytime there's an extra 15 minutes, we can squeeze in another game. And Trickdraw would be a great game for that, but because it's a bigger box, it takes up more space away from the main event games you're bringing out to game night. Another reason is the instant win condition. Now typically, I really like having multiple ways to win a game, but because the final showdown is the unique part of this game where, yes, you want as many points as possible, but you don't want to tie anyone or you can't win at all, then having this instant win condition prevents you from ever getting to that final unique part of the game. But it came up too often. Now, if it was really hard to get the instant win, I would be okay with it. But that said, it's like 3 cards, so you can just pull those out of the game if you don't like it as much as I didn't. And the other thing that the final showdown brings up is the ability for king making. If you don't know what that is, that's where another player has the decision to make another player win the game when they can't win themselves. And because of the final showdown having extra turns where you get to play some more cards, a player might be in a position to realize they can't win themselves, but they can tie the player in first, making that player lose and another player win. So do they just play a different card and let the player who's currently in first win, or do they tie that player and let a player in third place win? Now, if you don't like king making whatsoever, that could be a big problem for you. But this is like a 15-minute game, so it's not that devastating. You can just play another round and get back at them for doing that in the previous game. It's not as bad as like a 2-hour strategy game where you've planned out all this stuff and then it falls apart because one player's like, well, I can't win, so I'm just going to help this other player win. That is much more annoying. It's much less annoying in Trickdraw. Now, one thing I thought Trickdraw did really well was balancing the take that. I really don't like take that games, and Trickdraw does have some take that where you're targeting players with your abilities and taking things away that they've acquired. But to take away a really useful ability from a player, you're flipping their card face down and giving them points. So that kind of balances it really well, and there's a lot of abilities to be able to flip cards face up again that I didn't think the take that took away from this game, and thought it was perfectly fine. That's all there is to say on Trickdraw. It's a good card game, but some aspects like the king making and targeting players with negative abilities might make it not good for some groups, and that's okay. If those things don't bother you, then it's a quick, fun game that is worth checking out. That's all for this video. Remember to subscribe for more board game videos to come.